My apologies. I should have. Well, I don't know what I should have done, because I think if I switched my phone into airplane mode, then I probably couldn't do this. Anyway, I'm hopefully waiting to see if I'm back online. I'm just waiting for your message, Sarumi, hopefully to confirm that I'm back. If I am, hello everybody. If I'm not, then what to do? You're not hearing me anyway. But if I am, and I'm just literally waiting for Sarumi to confirm before I continue. Don't see the message yet. Sarumi? What I'm tempted to do now is actually go offline and then come back on. But if... Oh, it's working now. I've just got a message from Sarumi. It's working. Great. My apologies for that. Hare Krishna. Sorry about that. So where were we? Yes. So Vishwarupa's father, Twasta, I think was his name, he performed this whole yajna, and from that yajna came Vritasura. He appeared from that yajna. And anyway, then it's stated actually that Indra could have nullified the effects of that yajna. He had the power to do that. But he didn't. I guess he knew he was in the wrong or whatever, but he didn't do that. He accepted the reaction. And of course there were two reactions, if you like. One was Vritasura coming and then having to deal with that. But the other was, part of the whole thing of the reactions, but he distributed some of those reactions. And I'll just mention those because they're kind of interesting if you haven't heard them. I'm sure some of you have. And he distributed, he divided, he took half of the reaction, I think, and he divided the other half among 4 constituent parts. One was the land, and I'll just list them first before I forget them. One was the land, one was water, one was women, and one was trees. And the reaction that the land got was that there would therefore be deserts on the land. So we have deserts on the planet now. The Sahara Desert, I guess, is the most famous one. So deserts were created. And it's actually also interesting, just as a point of information, that Prabhupada says in the purport that people who are forced to live in deserts, and that's their habitat, they take birth there because of offences to the Brahmins. As Vishwarupa was a Brahmin, and this was connected to what Indra's offence to Vishwarupa, he killed him. So people apparently who dwell in deserts or are born into that kind of community, that's a reaction, some previous reaction of offences to Brahmins. So that was the land. Then you had the water. And these, but the accepting these reactions, they had benefits and negatives. So then I was just listing a negative in relation to land. The benefit, of course, is the land, what we've just been talking in the other verse that I started with, that the land produces all the necessities that we need. And that includes not just food, etc., but that's medicines. All medicines, ultimately all, and even the medicines that they'll seek to find to, deal with this coronavirus, they're all ultimately sourced from nature. That's the original source. You get some of the ingredients from nature, and then they're built on and all of that kind of thing, and synthesized and whatever they do with them. But the original source of all these cures is actually coming from nature. So that was the benefit of land. Land can produce so many things, but the negative was deserts. In relation to water, the benefit, of course, is that whatever you add water to, so you can add it to, cordial, or you can add it to, teas and coffees and all these types of things. It increases the volume of the drink that you're then going to consume. You couldn't have tea or coffee or cordial without water. It would be absolutely horrible like that. So these things are enhanced, if you like, by water. So that's the benefit. But the negative was that, and you'll see this in certain situations, when water becomes polluted through bubbles and foam that you'll see sometimes washed up on shores and like that in seaside situations, that foamy stuff, those bubbles and that foamy stuff that is produced, you can't use that. That's kind of contaminated and not fit for use as such. So that was water. Trees were the next one. That was that they produce sap, and sap is something that we, although I'm sure some saps are, that's another thing. That's a whole other discussion. But in general, saps are the type of thing that you stay away from. And even if you're ever walking in the forest and you happen to brush against a tree that has sap, you get all sticky, your clothes get ruined, etc., like that. And then in relation to women, that was that they had to have their monthly cycle. So Indra distributed half of his negative reactions, and those four constituents accepted half of them divided by four, and that's where they all came from. But anyway, the other thing was that Vritrasura appeared, and then a whole fight ensued between Vritrasura and Indra. And it's kind of interesting because essentially we consider asuras, as demons. But it's really interesting. Indra, for a whole variety of reasons, didn't know whether he should actually accept the challenge of Vritrasura. Now, ultimately, it was destined that Indra would prevail. That was kind of predestined, if you like. That was going to happen. Of course, it didn't necessarily look like that, because Vritrasura was like a big guy, a big powerful personality, so it didn't necessarily look like that to Indra. But it's kind of interesting because in the whole pastime, Indra's chickening out, to use a modern colloquialism. He's chickening out and doesn't actually want to engage in the fight. And then, like I said at the beginning, it's sometimes interesting that the asuras are almost not asuras. Vritrasura then starts instructing Indra that he should surrender. This is ultimately Lord Krishna's will, that Lord Vishnu's will, that this happens, and that he takes on this challenge, etc. And anyway, the result is guaranteed for him, and you can only benefit by doing the will of the Lord. But it's just kind of interesting that Indra's having all the doubts about that from an absolute point of view, and from the spiritual point of view. He's having all these doubts, whereas Vritrasura, who's the demon, he's the one reassuring him and encouraging him, and effectively functioning as his guru, to get him to follow the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as part of that, and I'm going to read these actually because I wouldn't know them, let me just get them quickly for you. So as part of that, and this is where Srila Prabhupada, he says that that these prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam are the sum and substance of Srimad Bhagavatam. So they're very, very important, these prayers. And some of these prayers are the ones that Vritrasura quoted in this particular pastime. And this was, as I say, in the middle of this fight, if you like. So these are the prayers. I'm just going to read them. And again, just in the context of the situation, the time that we're going through, and we're feeling, these types of situations affect people in different types of ways. By that, I'm talking about this lockdown thing and coronavirus. Some people actually, I read one article about a person who, for their whole life, they have struggled socially, and social interactions they've always found them very, very challenging and very stressful, very difficult. And they were just saying that because now everybody has to stay inside and lockdown and all that kind of thing, they were just expressing how for them it's kind of like a relief. It's like they feel that so much anxiety has been removed from their day-to-day lives because we're in lockdown like that. But for other people, it creates anxiety and creates stress and all of that. For a variety of reasons. So as devotees, however we're affected, and particularly we're affected in the negative, and it's creating some kind of anxiety for us, I think these prayers are very nice, and we can meditate on them and repeat them, etc. So this one is, O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, may I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet. O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes. My words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engages in the loving service of your Lordship. So that's one prayer. I'm thinking also, of course, of the famous prayer poem that Srila Prabhupada wrote when he first arrived in America, as he was arriving in America, and when he first arrived there on Boston Pier. And he was simply saying, I have no idea, Krishna. And this again goes back to the point about, no one knows the plan of the Lord. So Krishna is saying, Prabhupada saying, I've no idea why you brought me here, Krishna. It's just kind of like, I don't know. It's like kind of an amazing thing in many ways. I've no idea where Prabhupada has just traveled, whatever it is. I guess it's about. What is it? It's about. I'm guessing a little bit, but I think it's about 10,000 kilometers or something from India to America on a 6-week boat journey. We all know the details of that. But then when he arrives, says, Krishna, no idea why you brought me here. I'm here. But I've no idea why you brought me here. But then, of course, he says, I am your puppet. And if you want me to dance, and by that meaning if you want me to be effective, if you want me to dance, make me dance. I'm your puppet like that. So it was just Prabhupada, completely placing himself at the mercy of Krishna. And, of course, that's a wonderful thing to do theoretically and philosophically, and when we read Prabhupada's books and when we read Krishna conscious literature, we can understand that. But actually to put yourself then in that situation where there are no obvious external supports for you, and you are not just theorizing about this and understanding it philosophically, you're actually in that situation where you're wholly and solely dependent on Krishna. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing that if we're able to do that, or get to the stage of doing that. Here's a second prayer. O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruva Loka. Actually, I've been my form of exercise that we're all allowed to do. Once a day, not go beyond 2 kilometers, which is apparently increasing, not apparently, it is increasing to 5 kilometers on Tuesday. Not sure if I've always been a good boy and stayed within that 2 kilometer radius. But anyway, notwithstanding that, so one of the things that I do is I go cycling. And generally I go in the evening time. Because it seems to be a little less busy in the evening time. And I've noticed a couple of occasions, particularly when the weather's been so nice at the minute, a couple of occasions when, with the clear skies, when I'm coming back and I'm on my bike and it's getting dark and, there's not so much, you can see the sky quite clearly, the moon is out and all of that. You can see the North Star, Dhruva Loka. It's such an amazing thing. Obviously, it's not in that sense as big as the moon, but it's so bright and such a noticeable star in the sky. It's so noticeable. And when the sky is clear like that and you see through it, I mean, it's crazy, but it almost feels you can, extend your arm and touch it, pull it down out of the sky and have it in your hand. It's so clear, crystal clear. Anyway, just because I'm reading here about Dhruva Loka. So, O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruva Loka the heavenly planets or the planet where Lord Brahma resides, nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet. So again, all of these things, he lists all of these things here. You're talking about, not wanting to live on Dhruva Loka or enjoy Dhruva Loka or any heavenly planet, even Lord Brahma's planet, the highest planet in the material world, nor be the supreme ruler of any earthly planet. We understand that in the ultimate issue, the reason that living entities are here in the material world is because of their rebellious nature. And in essence, that rebellious nature is that they're in the spiritual world, they see Krishna's supreme position, and they become envious of that, and their kind of thought comes. It's interesting philosophical point, because there can be nothing material in the spiritual world. So it's like at the very beginning of any thought that some living entity might have like that they're kind of wondering, well, what would it be like to be Krishna? It's obviously at least a nanosecond before that thought actually manifests in the mind that they have to leave the spiritual world. But the understanding is that That's the reason we're here, because we're basically envious of Krishna's situation. And you see that. We've seen that through history since time immemorial. We have seen living entities wanting to be controllers, wanting to control whatever situation that they can control, up to and ultimately controlling countries and even trying to control the whole planet. That's the history of human society. So this prayer is stating, I don't want that to be a controller of the earthly planets or even the lower planetary systems. I simply do not want to be a controller, and I do not desire to be a master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor liberation from this material world. I don't want that. If any of those mean I have to give up your lotus feet, that I have to give up connection to you and service to you. One more. I think one more, isn't it? Just one more. Yeah, one more, I think. O lotus-eyed Lord, as baby birds that have not yet developed their wings always look for their mother to return and feed them, as small calves tied with ropes await anxiously the time of milking, when they will be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers, or as a morose wife whose husband is away from home always longs for him to return and satisfy her in all respects, I always yearn for the opportunity to render direct service unto you. You know, those descriptions, I mean, I'm not sure in our modern day and age, you know, the one about wives and husbands, you know, I'm not sure how much my wife would probably be relieved, you know, that this lockdown comes to an end and she gets a bit of a break from me. But certainly the other two are so relatable, and particularly that first one. If you ever see any of those nature documentaries which we've talked about before, they only ever show animals, insects, or whatever. They only ever show them doing four things: how they eat, how they sleep, how they reproduce, and how they protect themselves. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They're just the four things that they always show, because that's all in essence that they do. So as baby birds that have not yet developed wings always look to their mother, and they're always eagerly awaiting. And some of these birds, I think penguins, can go away for certainly days, if not weeks, if not months on end, going looking for food, and then they come back and then feed it to their young. But any birds, they will go off for a certain period of time, and then they come back and feed the young. And if there's more than one chick in the nest, when they come back, these chicks will literally kill each other to be the first to get to the mother, like that. So they are just totally dependent. Now, of course, we can go back to the point about ahoita kia pratihata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. But as an analogy, it clearly depicts the longing and the desire that the chicks have because they know they're going to get fed, but two, that they are just totally and completely dependent on the mother like that. So this prayer is expressing that in the context. This is what we've all got to try to do in terms of our dependence on Krishna, like that. Because we can go, you know, in various different situations, whatever they may be. We can go minutes, hours, days, weeks, who knows, without really thinking of Krishna, and certainly not thinking of Krishna as being, you know, the all in all in terms of our need, in terms of what it is that we actually want. We can become distracted by so many things. So these prayers are like clearly outlining, you know, that essential quality that we're striving to develop as it relates to Lord Krishna. And then you have someone like Draupadi, you know, who, and even better actually, sorry, rather than Draupadi, I should say Queen Kunti, you know, who is just expressing so beautifully, so eloquently that, you know, whatever calamities, and currently I guess we're going through a calamity in terms again of this coronavirus, whatever calamities there are, please, I embrace them, bring them on, to use the a colloquialism again. I embrace them. Please let them come again and again and again and again, because one thing that comes for me, meaning Queen Cunty, by the way, not necessarily myself, for one thing that always accompanies calamities is my mind becomes more fixed on you and on my service to you and my desire to render pure devotional service to you like that. So there's many, many examples throughout Srimad Bhagavatam and the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and the history of devotees like that, where these prayers express their desire to understand that, not to understand is the wrong word, but their desire to want to achieve this complete and total dependence on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. I think I will stop there. I think we're about, just approaching 4:30, and I think that's the kind of time slot. I'm not sure how this happens. We did it last time, but I've already forgotten in terms of how it happens if people want to make any comment or ask any question. I will rely on the Supreme Personality of Technology in ISKCON Dublin. I will rely on Sarumi for... I will fall at her lotus feet to guide that process, because I haven't got a clue. So I don't know, but if anybody does obviously have any question or comment and they're able to ask that question or give that comment, then that is most welcome. Hare Krishna. It's an interesting dynamic, by the way, that you're talking into your mobile phone. The mobile phone is just reflecting back my own image, unfortunately, and whatever's behind me. My disorganized bookcase, which I'm just seeing over my shoulder. My disorganized bookcase that I'm just seeing over my shoulder, which has on its prominently on it, if you can see that, the ISKCON Law Book. The ISKCON Law Book is part of my service. Okay, Sarumi, so I guess people can't do that then, right? They can't ask questions, or am I missing something here? Because, again, all I'm hearing, unless my mute, don't tell me my mute couldn't be on, because if my mute was on, you wouldn't hear me. Yeah. So should I just end here? Chan Hare Krishna. Oh, now Sarumi has a question on my screen, and it says from Vashali. Oh, and it's disappeared. Oh, no. It's disappeared. So I have to go. Now, I hope I don't if I do that.